Welcome to Beauty and the Biz. Discover how to grow your practice with effective cosmetic patient attraction, conversion, and retention advice from author, speaker, trainer, and cosmetic practice business and marketing coach, Catherine Maley, MBA.
Hello and welcome to Beauty and the Biz, where we talk about the business and marketing side of plastic surgery. I'm your host, Catherine Maley, author of Your Aesthetic Practice, What Your Patients Are Saying, and I'm also a consultant to plastic surgery practices to get them more patients and more profit. Now, today's episode is an interview with somebody I greatly admire and I have known for years. He has risen to iconic status, and you'll see why in a minute. Dr. Randy Waldman is a double board certified facial plastic and reconstructive surgeon in Lexington, Kentucky, and he's been in practice over 30 years now. Now, his articles are published in scientific journals, and he's recently been the editor for 2 medical books on facial plastic surgery. Now, he has given over 500 presentations at cosmetic surgery meetings over the past 25 years in the United States as well as Europe. Now, he's even, in addition to that, has grown his private practice to 4 surgeons. I can't imagine, plus a whole lot of staff. And he's been voted one of the top 15 influencers by PSP Magazine. However, his big claim to fame is his unique ability to organize and coordinate over 46 major medical conferences. And those include FPRS and also lots of them. So Dr. Waldman is the founder of a really popular meeting called Vegas Cosmetic Surgery. Now, it's the largest multi-specialty symposium of its kind in North America. Now, he's also founder and current director of the Global Aesthetics Conference in Miami Beach. And that's going to be held this fall, and it's still on, and we're going to talk more about it later because I want to see you there. Now, this is something Dr. Waldman doesn't know. When I got into this 20 years ago, this is 20 years this year, is my 20th anniversary, the very first meeting I used to go to was this Newport Beach meeting with the vendors, and it was the facial plastic surgery meeting. And when I was there, I thought when they said, oh, he runs this meeting, I thought that meant that's what he did for a living, because I used to run the California Medical Association's House of Delegates, a million years ago, and it was a full-time job for me. So the first year I was with him, I just assumed he was the meeting planner. And it turns out he wasn't just a meeting planner, he also had a thriving practice. And I realized, my God, this guy never sleeps. So I just thought that was really interesting. So now I realize he is a Superman, what he is. So Dr. Waldman, thank you so much for coming to my podcast. I really appreciate it. I can't admire you any more than I do. So I'd like to welcome you. Is there anything I left out?
I appreciate all those compliments. It's so flattering. And Catherine, I didn't realize that until tonight that you were even at the Newport Beach programs. Because did I have you speak at that?
No, I was in the back then. I was still a sponge. I was still learning the industry, and I wasn't speaking yet.
That's amazing. I didn't know that you went that far back with a lot of us. So you've seen a lot of us, kind of mature in our practice, grow older. Mm-hmm. But those were really great meetings in Newport. Mm-hmm.
Those are my favorite meetings.
They were really a lot of people don't remember them, but they were really, there were a lot of products, including Botox, introduced at those meetings. And Botox was introduced 8 years before it was actually FDA approved. And we took turns injecting each other using EMG, all those crazy things. And we were using hand, shoulder, those old VHS cameras to do things live. And I remember one time the power went down and we were doing all these lasers and in a ballroom and everything went dark. I mean, we had so much different things happening, but it was really a land, it was something that was a very important meeting for its time, because it really was the first continuous cosmetic surgery meeting probably in the country that welcomed different specialties. And that's what I sort of base my meetings career on, is trying to mold and trying to get different specialties together, because every specialty has a special knowledge that they have, and to share it among different specialties is going to do nothing but make the medicine of aesthetic medicine and surgery better. And so really started doing that under the influence of a really great facial plastic surgeon by the name of George Brennan. And George taught me a lot of what I know with meetings, and Jack Anderson taught me a lot of, because he had a meeting in New Orleans that when I was a fellow, I helped put together that meeting as a fellow. That's what the fellow did then. And then I was Norm Pastoric, who was
Oh, sure, I know him.
president of the AFPRS in 1991, got a note from Jack Anderson, and usually Jack was very influential. And he said, "Hey, Norm, I've got this guy. I really think he'd make a great chairman for the annual meeting." And in 1991, I was probably the youngest chair ever for that meeting, but it was in Kansas City. So not exactly a mecca for meetings. I mean, it's Kansas City, but it's not exactly where I don't even mean held there since then. But the #1 Academy meeting of all time in attendance was in Kansas City that year. And we brought in people from outside. And it was really heresy to bring in people from outside. But when you think about some of the names, a guy that just left St. Obashi's fellowship, I decided I read something that he wrote, and I was fascinated by this green peel or something. And so I invited Mark Rubin right out of his fellowship to be a lecturer at this meeting of facial plastic surgeons in Kansas City. And then there was a guy by the name of Bob Goldberg, who was in LA, who is now one of the esteemed oculoplastic surgeons in the world at the Jules Stein Institute. And I invited Bob. And so it really was, the beginnings of what then became, the regular affair in Newport Beach, and how I would invite in some of the leaders. And because it was in Southern California, I could get these California guys that would drive down. Mitch Goldman, one of our early people, Dick Fitzpatrick, again from the Goldman Group down in San Diego. We had really Ron Moy from LA was part of our faculty, Ed Torino. We had people all around us that we could draw from, and that was the beauty of it. And people were willing, for some reason, people were willing to lay their guns down. And Bruce Cannell was may he rest in peace, the late great Bruce Cannell, one of the great plastic surgeons of really our era. And we all loved Bruce. He was a gentle giant. But Bruce taught us how to do facelift, and so it was really a collective effort. And I just took that mantra and ran with it. And that's Newport Beach, and that's global aesthetics, and that's what I based my career on, is trying to get people together.
I remember at Newport Beach, Dr. George Brennan would park his Rolls Royce in the front,
and
I loved that. I remember thinking, who are these surgeons? They were a different crowd. It was interesting. Anyway, let's get back to the current events, which of course we can't talk about anything but COVID-19. And I wasn't going to take for granted what's going on in Kentucky, because it seems so changing and regionally different. What's your status there? Are you in? Are you out? What's going on in your area?
We've just been allowed to open our doors really in the last week, we're in a phase 1 type of thing right now. We have a governor that's been pretty hardcore about things, and that's his privilege. He's the governor. And so we followed the governor's guidelines like everyone else. We closed down, I think on March the 11th, by the governor's decree, and stopped doing surgery. We have our own surgery center. We do 95% of our surgery there. And, we were forced into a shutdown, and we had months of things backed up. We were booked up several months with cases among the doctors in our group. And all of a sudden it stopped. And then we had to figure out, okay, how long is this going to go? Like a lot of people, we didn't know. Is this 1 week? Is this 2 weeks or shutdown, or could it be longer? And the could it be longer part was very frightening, because we have a staff and they count on us, and we didn't know what was going to happen. And then all of a sudden we're hearing congressional solutions to this, and, PP, whatever it is, loans. And, we're talking about terms that we've never heard before, like furloughs and layoffs. And these were terms we'd never used before.
What did you end up doing with your staff?
Well, I've never laid off anybody before. I didn't know what it was. I mean, I kind of knew, but we looked at it, and we tried to decide for a while. For the first 2 or 3 weeks, we said, no, we're keeping our guys together, because I didn't think it would go any longer than that. But, eventually we all came to the recognition that this wasn't to be taken lightly, and that we were maybe going to be out for months. And we were correct. And so they came out with all the things that they came out with, that you could furlough people, and that they would be able. There were some people that made more under furlough by getting the extra $50 an hour, the $600 a week, deal added to their unemployment. There were some of our employees that actually made more money when they were furloughed at home. So we furloughed about 2/3 of our staff, and we kept the third on to work ahead. I sort of took my time to try to figure out projects to improve our practice, knowing that we're all going to come back. So let's come back stronger. And it was my idea to come back stronger. We needed, some solutions to some of the issues that we had. We wanted to work on our website. Now was the time that we can do it. We have a videographer that works for us. It was a news reporter that was a videographer when she was a news reporter. So we decided we'd start creating a video series for our preoperative planning and discussions, and also for our landing pages on our website. So we decided that we would do our own videos, and we've done several so far, and we're still doing them. And you know, we're working on the website, and we're working on newsletters and the things that we thought we had to do to keep in touch with our patients during whatever down period that we had. And you know, we started doing video consults or telephone consults or virtual consults.
Were you doing those before this?
No, we really weren't. We really weren't. I know a lot of practices did, but we really didn't. I mean, there were occasions where somebody would send us pictures. They would be from LA. They'd send us pictures, and but it wasn't a regular thing. I still enjoy meeting people and talking to them, and to me, that's half of the fun of what I do is intermingling with patients and talking to them, and use whatever personality I have to make them more comfortable. That's harder to do over the phone. It's harder to do, in this type of format even. But we started doing it, and the more we did it, the more we realized that this was going to be a thing for a while. And I don't know, we're back open, and I saw one of my partners today. I looked at his schedule, and he has 9 new virtual consults. And we have a conference room, and they go in there and they flip on the, whatever they've got in there and the technology. And we have an IT person, as you know, that works for us in our practice, because we have like 23 computers and none of us know anything about them. So we have to have somebody that's always installing a printer or fixing something that's down or replacing a computer. So anyway, we set this all up, and the virtual consults are, I don't, you'll have to tell me why. You're a consultant that I've leaned a lot on over the years. I give your book to every new employee for that. And I need a few more right now, by the way. Everybody's taking the book, but I've always relied on that. But it's interesting, Catherine, our closure rate on these virtual consults is much higher than any closure rate that we've ever had in our practice.
I'm hearing that all over the nation.
It's close to 100%.
Yep.
Now, I guess it's a select group that, that really during this whole crisis is they're looking at themselves, taking selfies and looking in the mirror, and that they're stuck at home and they're, but I don't know. Maybe you can figure it out. But yeah, it just seems that every consult is real serious, and their big question is, when can I get on your schedule? And I keep giving the same answer. Well, we're still restricted. We've got a backlog of 3 months of surgery. We'll probably get you on at the end of summer or something like that. We're hoping that we can, and we're hoping that there's no rebound on this ridiculous plague. And so we'll see. I mean, but everybody wants to book. That's the hard thing right now. So last week, for the first time, we started with body cases. We decided that we would do the quick body cases that we thought would be the simplest for our staff, that would use the least amount of propofol, which is we use everything. We do everything with IV sedation. We don't, unlike a lot of the guys in California, we don't use general anesthetic. There's not much that we do, including pretux, that we can't do under a kind of a deeper IV sedation with propofol and local anesthesia. So everything we do is, but also we're kind of, the supply that we normally have in stock, and we normally keep a fair amount of stuff for, that's just for our surgery center. We know that sometimes there are shortages, particularly of propofol. So we have a fair amount of propofol, but we know that if we can't get a new supply, which it may be tough to get, because we have a lot of people on ventilators around the country, that the government's probably going to be kind of, securing as much propofol as they can get. So there's back orders. Anyway, to make a long story short, we're trying to do cases that we're not using a ton of drugs to keep them under. So we decided that we would do primarily all the backlog breast augmentations and breast procedures that we have. And we're waiting for really more effective testing to try to make sure that we're safe in doing rhinoplasty, because that's probably the most dangerous procedure, as you know. So, but the COVID virus hangs out in the nose, Catherine. So the most dangerous procedure that any of us, would do for our staff is rhinoplasty.
And I'm watching some of you surgeons like wearing full-on spacesuits.
They are. I know.
Holy cow.
No, we've seen that. I just can't do that. To me, if I have to put on armor to operate like that, I'm not going to feel comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Not that, rhinoplasty is a very meticulous millimeter by millimeter operation. And if I don't feel that I'm safe in doing it, then I really don't don't want to do it. And so we're kind of holding off and letting the other guys do the procedure and do their procedures. And then I'm going to try to get back involved with rhinoplasty somewhere around June the 15th.
Oh, okay. And are you putting any other restrictions on your surgical patients, like of a certain age, you're not going to? If it takes longer surgery.
That's a good thought. That's why we started with breast augmentation. That's a much younger group. And we're trying to avoid surgery on the people over 40 years of age. And so that in essence is what we are trying to do.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, how are you handling the testing of things? Testing your staff or testing your patients? How's that going?
Every surgical patient has to be tested within 48 hours. And then we're asking them to self-quarantine between the time of that test and they come in. We're asking them to come in, let a family member drop them off, and then the family member cannot wait in our reception area in surgery, which is typically what we do. We have two reception areas, one for our third floor clinical region and for the first floor surgery. So we're just asking the family member to drop them off, and then we'll ask them to pick them up when the surgery's done, and we'll call them. So they call ahead, they text us, we welcome them, and then it's just the patient. So we do test everybody 48 hours in advance, and we usually have a 24-hour turnaround on the test.
Gotcha. And regarding your staff, I know I've been on some of the webinars where there was not a good answer for this, but what if your staff tested positive and you send them home, but then what do you do? Did anyone come up with a good answer?
That would be a tough situation because, I think then if we've been around them, then we would have to probably at least quarantine the people that have been, around them and that we think would be subject to any type of, infection. So we're just hoping and praying that doesn't happen to us. If it happens in surgery, then we'll probably have to bring our third floor staff down to surgery to fill in, and they're certainly capable of that. Most of them, a lot of nurses. We have like 5 or 6 nurses that work for us, but we're hoping and keeping our fingers crossed with everything that we're doing. We're protecting the patients from our staff, protecting staff from our patients, and doing things as good as we can do them. But there's no question we live in fear of that. We live in fear of patients. The thing that I most fear is probably a patient getting an infection from somebody in their family 4 or 5 days after the procedure. If it was one of our bigger procedures, but that's why we're not doing those right now, and we're trying to limit our procedures to the smaller procedures. Because if it was somebody and they had like a tummy tuck and they got the COVID infection 5-7 days after the tummy tuck, it'd be a rough course for them. There's some anecdotal evidence that some of the bigger procedures do lower the immune response, and so we don't have much of an immune response to the COVID virus, but what little we do have, I guess we probably need. So that's a tough question. It's an interesting question, and I hope I don't have to deal with that. If a staff member were to get infected, how would we do things in our office? It'd be tough. I mean, I guess in the worst case scenario, we'd have to shut the office for 10 days.
Oh dear. All right. And what's happening with the Medi-Spa or the non-surgical? Is there a date on that?
Yeah, in Kentucky, it's May the 25th. So 3 weeks after we were allowed to open our offices, but I actually called the governor's office and I did some contacts there, and they didn't want to have an unfair playing field, so they asked us to avoid the injections until the 25th to give everybody an equal playing field. And it's like, I don't think there's an equal playing field anyway. I think we have an unfair advantage due to our overhead and malpractice and on and on. But we honored that. We haven't done any injections, and we don't plan on doing it until May the 25th, and then we'll open the doors for that. But again, we're requiring the same. They're asking us to outfit ourselves the same way that the dentists do. So we're following dental protocol, and the dentists in Kentucky are in full battle gear. I mean, they're N95 mask, goggles, visor, and then some type of scrubs and some protective clothing over the scrubs. And so we couldn't get what we call the bunny suits. They're back ordered by far, and nobody can get them because they've been using those in the hospitals. So now they've created some sort of paper white gown or something that we're using over our scrubs. And we're asking everybody to change into scrubs when they come into the office down in the operating room. And then we're asking them to, we'll launder those. We have a service and we're asking them to not to wear them out of the office. And our anesthesia people come in from outside. We're asking them to do the same thing. So everybody in our office changes into scrubs when they get there, and changes out when they leave. And we're using N95 masks for any type of invasive treatment. That'll include injection. And our patients are wearing masks. Obviously, if you're injecting somebody's lips and stuff, we haven't done that yet. But if you are, then you're going to have to take your mask off. But you're keeping your mask on, and goggles too, and your visor.
It's just going to affect our industry is all about relationships and bonding with people and trusting them. I just don't see how this is going to work when we can't see each other anymore. I just know I haven't been out much, but when I do go out, I feel so antisocial because I already am like, don't touch me, don't get near me. It's what a weird feeling. We're all masked up. It's just for right now. I hope it. I
think this is all temporary. At least I hope it's not long lasting, because I totally agree with you. When I remember the transition when the dentist was there, and then all of a sudden they're wearing masks, and all of a sudden I'm talking about before COVID, and you felt they were coming at you like you were this infected leper.
Yes.
Because when I was younger, or even until 5 years ago, the dentists weren't wearing all this protective stuff that they have been over the last number of years, and so in the end, I agree with you. It does take the personal touch out of all this, and I am worried about that. It's very worrisome to me.
What are you going to do about the patient flow? Because the way it's set up now, I don't know if you can you still do half of what you used to do? The math is going to be funny on this because you've had all this overhead because you've had so much patient flow. If that were to be cut in half, let's say, due to all the new regulations, or you tell me, is that too much? How does the math work? Because if you still have all the staff, yet half the flow that you had due to limitations, what does that do for you?
Now, the math doesn't work. The math doesn't work very well. And that's the whole secret to this. Basically, it seems like the loan, you thought you were getting something for nothing, but you weren't. You were really paying the government's unemployment insurance and getting people off the unemployment rolls before you were really able to go full steam. And you were practicing with restrictions. And so, it just is, it is tough. And we're still working through that. I don't think that the key is the loan. I think that's just something that helps a little bit. If we can't get all that forgiven, then it's a loan at 1% or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We're paying that back. And we had a decent reserve to go into this. We're not an office that has any leases on any equipment. And our debt is just our rent and our salaries and our payment to each other. And all the doctors, we basically, cut our pay in half and made sure that we had plenty of reserve. So we bit the bullet ourselves in our practice, and we did that early on. Fortunately, none of us lived beyond our means, and we were able to do that.
Good for you, because quite a few med spas and some of the practices who are not good business people, if you were hiding fighting business, now is the time to learn it. A lot of surgeons don't love the business side of surgery. I would say now you really need to know your numbers.
Yeah, you really do. You've got to be a businessman when you do what we do. It's the hard part of it. The younger doctors, it's kicking and screaming that they want to do any of that. But those of us that have been, through the battles, we understand that it is a business, and you have to run it like a business, and you can't overspend your balance at all. You have to be frugal and at the right time, and you have to spend money when there's a good ROI, but don't spend money needlessly, and don't just sucker for whatever's around the corner, whatever somebody tries to sell you. So we don't have any debt in our practice at all. We have no loans, and we live within our means. And for us, it's not been easy, but we were never threatened with going out of practice or anything like that. We were always comfortable, and I run a pretty tight ship.
That's for sure. But you've also been through a few recessions, and you've had a lot of adversity. Would you say this is your biggest hiccup?
There's no question. Yeah, there's no question. This is very similar to what happened. I think it was in 91 or 93 or whatever it was. That was a tough period of time. 9/11 was a little bit of a tough period of time. People were then. People are frightened now. But I live in a rural state. It's not got the big cities that you guys have out in California. There are 4 or 5 counties surrounding me that haven't had a death. There are 4 or 5 counties around me that maybe they've had a couple cases of the COVID virus. Louisville's the other big city in Kentucky besides Lexington. They've had, for whatever reason, 10 times the number of cases and deaths that we have in Lexington. I think we've had 20-something deaths, and that's way too many. I had a really good friend that was on a ventilator, doctor who I started at the same time in practice. That was a tough thing for all of us to see. He's a good friend, or was a good friend, and he's still alive, fortunately, but he spent 4 weeks on a ventilator. It's a tough illness. But Lexington hasn't had the type of thing. My daughter had, as many people in the hospital that she works at in the Bronx with COVID virus as we have in the entire state of Kentucky. So every state's different. California's different. New York's different. But we all kind of chin to the same bar at first, where we all got pillows down, and it's an interesting thing. We talked a little bit about all the medical parts of this and what this disease really does, and I think we're learning more every single day. It may be that we're going to learn a whole lot before this is over, and I have a feeling that therapeutics will trump vaccines, and that's where that's where I'm hoping we'll be by the fall, is that we'll have a way of treating this thing so that people don't get deathly ill. They can get it, but they can't get deathly ill until we have enough people that they can't pass it around. And we're not there, but I'm hoping for our practices that's where we're at. But Kentucky's been pretty strict about things, but we also haven't been, one of the states that's had the biggest, where it's had the biggest penetration. And for that, I guess we're fortunate. But we're a rural state as well. That's a big difference, Catherine. We don't have very many high-rise apartments outside of the University of Kentucky and the universities around us, and so we don't live like they do in New York. It's not to say it's bad in New York. I love New York, but different environment.
Very different environment. I love it there. I love to go there in the fall. It's so pretty. Beautiful. It's got the white picket fences, the horses outside in the prairies. It's just lovely. I really like it. By the
way, they say the air is much better up there right now.
I'll bet. Where, I know you don't know where things are heading, but in your crystal ball, do you think things are going to come back sooner rather than later? I know you have a meeting coming up in the fall. You still have it planned. You assume we're going to travel and fly again, or what do you think?
I think that we've got to get past the mental part of this. We've got to get past the fear factor, and like every other thing that we were faced with, MERS and SARS, and those of us that paid attention to that, they just disappeared. It just disappeared. Why did it disappear? I'm not exactly sure why it disappeared, but it did. And I'm hoping that by the end of summer, we're going to see somewhere there have been no new cases of the virus reported in a certain period of time, and maybe in a week or maybe. And once we've got that, then life will be much better. But right now, everybody's living in fear of what's going to be the next thing that happens. And travel, obviously, the travel industry is crippled out of fear. Maybe some of it's appropriate. I don't know what kind of screening goes on airplanes and the system and everything. But illness and airplanes just seem to go together, and they did before the COVID, stuff went on. So I hope they're getting that looked at as well. What kind of filtration systems do they have? How do they recirculate air? Do they have virus filters on that? So that's something to look at. But yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic, Catherine, that by November, we're going to be at a point that we can all get together again and celebrate the end of this thing, or at least a temporary truce that we've called with the COVID virus. And maybe, there's certainly a chance that we're still a ways away even at that point. We'll have to see. I don't stop living in fear of what's going to happen 6 months from now. I think we need to think that life will get better and that we'll normalize things in this country. I have great fear that if we don't do that, I'm not sure we'll have much of an economy to come back to unless we can get past this fear factor.
Right. So we have two things from a cosmetic patient point of view. We have the fear factor, and they have to feel safe. And then even if they feel safe, how do they feel about their job? How do they feel about the economy? Can they afford a $10,000 surgical procedure? That's all this uncertainty that makes this crazy, because I usually want to talk about marketing. And I think, is this a good time to market? Have you changed any of your marketing plans? Have you toned it down, or have you built it up? Like, what is your message?
All the above. I think at this point, I saw an ad for a meeting. Don't want to say the name of the meeting, but I used to be involved with it, and it said "Go viral," and something to go viral dash and, kill it on social media. And that's, I mean, I had people send me that ad thinking that I was somehow involved with that. I had nothing to do with it. It's not something I'm involved with, but that's probably pretty tasteless. And, and so I think what you have to do is be sensitive to the fear out there and work with it to inform people about why you're creating a safe environment and why you're doing things really well, and that their safety, which we've always tried to do even before the virus, that their safety is paramount in our practice. We try to do things the right way, but I think that now more than ever, the patient's safety is the number one thing that you should be emphasizing. And I think advertising should be really informational at this point and not self-promoting. And there's a difference. We have to self-promote ourselves at times. I'm better than the other guy. Come to me. We do the best job. All that. Now I think it needs to be informational, and I think people will appreciate that and recognize that we're trying to do the right thing. And it's interesting though. I think you and I have talked about this, that we haven't seen yet. I'm waiting for it to fall, but our phones have never, in the history of my practice, been busier.
Oh my God, good for you.
My girls are getting killed with phone calls. And some of it is moving and people around logistics and people wanting to know if we're open and when can they get in for it. But we're also doing more consults now than we ever have. And, it's an interesting phenomenon when you talk about money and discretionary money. I don't know that fear factor, and maybe because, again, I live in a rural environment with the COVID has not ruled everything that goes on in our state. We're a little bit different, but I'm just talking about our personal experience so far has been, I thought, oh God, we're not going to see, it's going to be a fall off like we haven't seen that yet. Now, August and September, we may see a dip, but because we always see a little bit of a slowdown in August and September, most practices do, as you know, but we're booked up through that period of time, assuming, everything goes well that we don't get shut down again. Do worry about the shutdown part of it, and that is real. And a second wave of this stuff is very real. And I don't know. I mean, we could get shut down in 2 or 3 months again in the winter. And I think every practice better gear up for that and better look at what they're doing and how much money they're spending and how they're doing things. But they can't get greedy and rush into stuff now and overbook and overdo it in surgery and put people at risk. And most of our patients want to know that. I had one patient that because I said, well, I'm a little worried that you guys are going to try to squeeze in more people because you've got a big backlog. And I assured the lady that, no, that's not what we do. I said, we're actually, we have a capacity to go double of what we're doing right now as a startup because the governor's asked us to cut back on what we do, as well as he's doing the same thing with the hospitals in Kentucky. They're asking the hospitals to cut back to 50% until we really see that we can distance and we can do this in the right way and we don't get any second wave in Kentucky that's a devastating second wave. So we're trying to do things the right way, assure your patients that their safety. That's going to be, so if I'm going to market, it's going to be informational, newsletter stuff, keeping them abreast of what we're doing, and some fun stuff. What have we done during, what have the doctors been doing? What have the nurses been doing? We're all going crazy at home, this kind of stuff. And so I think it's going to be more informational and fun rather than promotional and not running any specials. We're not going to do that. That just feels too cheap at this point in time. So we're going to keep it just, and we're going to do things the right way. I just think if you do it the right way, then okay.
I keep hearing that a lot of practices are getting more phone calls and their virtual consults are like fantastic. And I wonder if that's because of time. Because most of us, maybe now that we can sit still and really think straight, maybe that is helping. Because a cosmetic patient usually is scared, or it's a money, or it's a time issue. I wonder if that time issue, we took that away and boom, here they are. Maybe.
Well, there's always more mirrors at home than there are in the office. And I think that people spend a lot of time thinking about things that maybe they've been thinking about, but they put on the back burner. And you're right. Now people have time to really focus on it. You see everybody out beautifying their yards in my neighborhood. I've never seen anything like it. It never looked as good. And you think, well, it's good for the neighborhood. Well, it's kind of the same thing with personal appearance. Everybody's kind of looking at the yard saying, yeah, I can make it look a little bit better. I got some time to work on it now. And maybe it's the same thing with faces and bodies, and so yeah, some of what you're saying has validity. I hadn't thought of it that way, but it's true.
And one of my suggestions is put as many mirrors in your office as you have at home. Mirrors should be everywhere, strategically located.
Well, I said their office, not my office. It's loaded with mirrors. We have mirrors. We have many mirrors. We have at least 2 in every room, and
it's the best-selling tool on the planet.
It is.
You don't need to say a word. Let the patient handle it. She'll handle it.
We're in the mirrors and cameras, so
right. So I wanted this is a different podcast, but I can't help but I didn't know you have now 4 surgeons, you including 3 others.
We have 2 facial plastic surgeons and 2 plastic surgeons.
Holy cow! I just want to just a little touch on that, because knowing you, it's probably a dictatorship rather than a democracy. So
my partners would probably tell you that that's true. I'll deny it, and yeah, I'm the administrator because I'm the senior person, and I've made all the mistakes that you can make. So you learn from your mistakes. They haven't made enough mistakes yet because I haven't let them make mistakes yet, and that is a problem for every parent, and also for every senior partner like me. You have to let them kind of flounder a little bit. So when I've been out of there, I've let them go in, but I've still been pretty. I think I've worked harder during this 2 months that I've been at home, just making sure that all the I's were dotted and the T's crossed, and all the tax issues and the loan issues and all the financial stuff. And they, really, my partners don't take a lot of time to really have to think about that. And they're happy to defer that to me. But eventually, everybody has to learn, and you learn from your mistakes. And so, yeah, but I believe in the association between specialist surgeons and plastic surgeons, and whether it's an oculoplastic surgeon or a facial plastic surgeon or even a dermatologist. I think the multi-specialty practices have worked pretty well. Steve Shantz has been with me for 17 years, I think now, believe it or not, and it's worked. I think he's the busiest breast surgeon in Kentucky, and but he was almost from the start, almost from day one, and it's worked for him. So it's worked for us in our practice, and we're fortunate to have a really good relationship. And there are always ups and downs in any marriage, and a partnership is a marriage. Yep, our quarrels and our tiffs and get our feelings hurt at times, and we'll disagree on some stuff, and we just gotta get together and try to make it work, because the alternative is the solo practice. And I think in today's world, we're able to be successful because of shared overhead, and because we have a very collegial sort of environment, and we have a great staff too. I don't want to understate that I have such a great staff, but you have to mold your staff, and you have to pick the right people. And we don't always pick the right people, but we try. And if somebody's not the right person, then early on we have to make a change. Don't let it linger. And that's my best advice to anyone. Negativity, is contagious and can be spread around in office. So, but I think our staff is our greatest asset. And you saw evidence of that the other night with Morgan, who's like a child of mine, but because she reminds me so much of one of my daughters. But I watched her start. She had a certain immature level when she was very young, and she's molded into somebody that's really helping our practice through this whole COVID thing, and it's been very important to us.
And I think that's a pearl for other doctors. You gave that job to her, and she took it and ran with it. So she cared. Somebody needs to focus on COVID-19, the precautions of, the processes of, and she is on it. I mean, she knows those regulations upside and down, and she will keep her eye on that ball.
One of the things that I insist on, Catherine, always have, never vary from this, that everybody that works for me has got to have a 4-year degree. It's not that college teaches you so much, but it's a level of maturation and being able to work with others. And it shows me somebody that's interested in learning. And so everybody, it doesn't matter whether they're at the front desk or what, everybody in my practice has always been a college graduate. And my nurses are all, I think they're all 4-year degree nurses, and they're all very bright. And so, we hire people on personality and intelligence. We can teach them. We can teach them to be whatever within our practice. We love ICU nurses. We love critical care people when they're working in surgery because they know the rhythms, but give me somebody that's intelligent, give me somebody that's personable, and we can train them in everything else.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about your meeting, because the reason I know you very well is early on you gave me my first break in speaking, and I used to speak at every one of your Vegas Cosmetic Surgery meetings, and then you did the Global Aesthetics meeting, and I appreciate that. I needed the exposure and the experience of doing that. And the reason your meetings are so successful, like, I mean, I speak all over the world, your meetings are the most well attended, and the culture and the ambiance at those meetings is amazing. And I think it's because they're multi-specialty, so everyone's relaxed and they're not so paranoid, or I don't know what the word is, but you have board certified dermatologists, ocular plastic, facial plastic, and plastic. And they're just great meetings. And will you always keep it that way, the multi-specialty? Is that your...
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that's the key. Even if I was running meetings in my own society, which I did, I think I did about 10 meetings for my own society. The last one being in 2005. But even then, I brought people from other specialties, because I think that, we tend to get stale in our own meetings. People talk about that all the time. Hear the same speakers and, the same talks, the same speakers, year after year, you've got the same group. So I try, my mantra is to change up the faculty by 50% every year. So I'm going to try to find 50% new people every year. That unfortunately means that there's some people that won't be coming back that particular year, but they're still on my list. It's not like we've crossed them off. But our whole thing is you can't have the same program year after year after year. So we always try to look at it. And every year, it's like writing a new book. It's like, okay, this is my book, and I'm going to start putting together the first few chapters. And it's usually stuff that I'm interested in as a surgeon and as a doctor, or one of my partners is interested in it. And we're looking at it just like we're attending the meetings. I always try to put myself in a meeting and trying to find new and different stuff. But by changing the faculty by 50% every year, then I'm getting new and different stuff. And I encourage the people that we invite back to also give me some new and different stuff. I've done that with you a number of times, haven't I? I've said, Catherine, I need 7 new talks. And you'll actually go out and do the work to do that. Everybody doesn't do that. But and some of the doctors will just give me the same talk year after year, and we eventually stop inviting them, because it's not that I don't think they're good speakers or great guys or good friends. And I haven't endeared myself to some people when I've had to do that. But you know what? People are paying money to come and listen to what you have to say. And so I've got to give them, I feel cheating. I feel like I'm cheating them unless I'm giving them value for their dollar. The same thing with exhibitors. I keep a ratio where I won't just try to fill my exhibit hall unless I know I have a certain number of attendees. I never want less than a 6-to-1 ratio, 6 attendees to every exhibitor. I've lived with that. And I know other meetings don't do that. I lecture at some of them. I lecture at meetings where there's 300 people there and 110 exhibitors. It's less than 3 to 1. And I'm like, how do they do that? And I don't know, but I can't do that. So we always try to, and you know what? Our exhibitors are incredibly important. A lot of them are really good friends of mine. A lot of them are really close to me. I met, it's intentional. They're good people. They work hard for a living, and so I don't just use them as a means to an end. They're part of the show, and they're part of the reason that people come to the meeting. People want to have a good place to shop, a good place to, that one-stop shop. So everybody's important. Everybody's got a role. It's like a play. I'm like a choreographer, and I've got dancers and actors, and then you have to put it all together. And the satisfaction comes the day after the meeting's over, and you realize that you did it decently. That was better than the last time. Now see if you can improve on it next time a little bit better. Here are the problems. So we always come back, sit around a conference table with my staff. My staff always are the ones running the meeting, right? I mean, it's not people. We don't hire people on the outside to do it. There are staff, and we'll sit around the table and say, what'd you like about it? What didn't you like? What do you guys think we can do better? And we debrief each other in a nice way, right after the meeting. And then we go on to the next one.
Well, you do a really good job of that. What is the URL? What's the website for the global meeting?
It's either gaconference.com, GA Global Aesthetics, or globalaestheticsconference.com. Either one gets you to the same website. And this year it's November 5th through 8th, God willing. And we'll probably be one of the first meetings, hopefully out of the box of all these meetings that have been canceled. I think industry is really counting on us, because they're really tired of being in their offices. They can't sell stuff in their office, as you know. It's very difficult. It's more of a hands-on thing with industry. I think a lot of people are counting on us, coming through, and I'm just hoping that the travel is acceptable and that people are able to fly. And I hope that we don't have, significant restrictions from the hotel, the beach, which, by the way, is a wonderful hotel. Anybody that's been there, it's really one of the great properties in Miami Beach, right on the ocean, and Collins Avenue, and then Atlantic Boulevard and Lincoln Avenue are right, adjacent there. And so it's kind of a triangle that's the best part of South Beach. But I hope that that we get the space that and that we're able to have the same number of people that we need to make things work. There's a quotient to making it work, and so I think the hotel is still, they don't know what's going on either. I mean, they've been really hurt. All the hotels, travel industry, gosh almighty, everything's been hurt, Catherine, and so we're all just trying to adapt to a new norm, and we're praying for the best things to happen. If something happens that we can't do the meeting, then we'll come back and we'll do it the next year. It's not like we're going away, and you live with what you can do, and there's fate takes usually if you just kind of follow that, you'll be okay.
Right.
So I hope that I just want everyone that we know in our circle, Catherine, anybody that watches your stuff, pray for safety and health. And then if you got safety and health, particularly health, then you've got everything.
For sure. I have no complaints on my end, although I do miss the travel because I liked it a lot. That's when I got to get out and talk to all of you in person because I'm a big hallway person. That's where I learned everything about this industry, what's going on, what you surgeons feel, what are you worried about, what are you happy about,
That brings up a really good question that I have for you and for the audience or anybody that's listening. I have my feelings. I know these virtual meetings are springing up and virtual this, virtual that. I never did it for that reason, because then you would be implying that maybe it's just about money. To me, it's about the collegiality or whatever the word is, to be able to get with people and talk to them about their life and their practices. And it's kind of a way of getting together. It's like an annual reunion. For me, it's like an annual reunion. A lot of the same faces and people, new faces too, and new people to meet, and people particularly from other specialties, and people of all ages, young, middle, old, and it's just a way of enhancing your life, and it's also a way of traveling and seeing some other places, but mostly getting together with people. And I think when you take that element out of it, you say, well, you're going to do a meeting by sitting in front of a computer for 3 days. I can't sit in front of a computer for an hour and a half or 2 hours, and I'm off a different tangent. It's like my ADD kicks in, and I just can't do it. I mean, so I can't even look at a 2-hour surgery online and study what they're doing with that surgery. I get bored, and I'll fast forward it and have play with the buttons, get through all this. So I don't know how people can really do that. And but I do think that I've learned a lot about webinars, Catherine, and I do think that there is a role. I'm doing a webinar every 2 weeks, as you know. You've been part of it with the Aesthetic Authority, which are the people that, with Derm Times and Ophthalmology Times and Medical Economics. And I'm the medical editor, as I told you, for Aesthetic Authority. It's a new trade magazine. And we've been doing this every two weeks, and we're getting like well over 1,000 viewers each time. So there is a nerve there with people to see a group of doctors, or as it's going to be tomorrow night, it's going to be lawyers. And we're going to talk about medical legal issues associated with this horrible plague and our practices and employees and everything. And I feel like that may be something that I'll start incorporating in the meetings.
Mm-hmm, that's a great idea. Aesthetic Authority, I know that they opened up a private Facebook group. Is it private? Do you have to be invited to it, or can they?
Yeah, well, you kind of do. I guess I'm the one that's in charge of it. I actually, it was my idea, and I wanted to open it up because I felt so alone when we were closed down on March. And I wanted my colleagues, I wanted to interact with them. They're a bunch of smart people. So I said, let's get this discussion group together. And I ran it by the people at the Aesthetic Authority. And they said, well, we'll do it. We'll set it up for you. I said, well, good. Let's have some dialogue. And before long, I knew there were 100 people on there that were part of the discussion group. And it was interesting. I learned about the PPP loan there. I learned a lot of things there. And, we started teaching each other. We were all in the same boat together. None of us had ever done this stuff before. Right. We just knew what was going on. And we leaned on each other, and that's what colleagues are for.
I'll put that in the show notes too. Aesthetic Authority. I'm also on the board of it, I think. And it's been a great new group of forward-thinking people. Like that's the part I like. A bunch of ideas we're going by. I love the ideas and people thinking. Nobody's shut down here. Everybody, like all of you, are working harder than ever. And I also have that ADD problem. I can't even watch a movie now. If I'm 15 minutes into a movie and I'm not enthralled, I'm out. I can't do it.
I think that's why I watch so much Seinfeld. It's only 30. I can get through 30 minutes of Seinfeld.
Well, and hysterical.
I've seen the same episodes before 10 times, and I can't remember seeing them or something. It's all good. But yeah,
when you get older, you don't have as much time. Maybe that's what it is. Like I have more of a sense of urgency, and I don't want to waste it doing
it's
something.
sad. I just read tonight that Ben Stiller's dad died. And of course, dad was George's dad on Seinfeld.
Oh my God, how old was he?
92. But you remember George's dad on Seinfeld?
Of course.
I actually thought it was his real dad, but it ends up being Ben Stiller's dad. I guess he's a comedian in and of himself, Jerry Stiller. And he had no idea that it was Ben Stiller's father that was his father on Seinfeld.
And he was married to that other lady forever. As long as you've been married. How long have you been married?
37 years.
Holy cow.
Yeah, long time.
I should do a show on marriage and spouses working with each other. That's also
and we have, and we're I couldn't have done what I've done without my wife.
She is like your right hand. Holy cow.
She and my son has been very important in our meetings. Matthew, I have 2 daughters that are physicians, and you know what? They're doing their thing, and I feel like, my daughter that's in dermatology, she loves to come to our meetings, as you know, and she's grown up in those meetings, so she knows as many people as I do. So it's kind of a family affair for us. Yeah, it all has been.
Good for you. So I think we're going to wrap up here. Do you have any last words?
No, it's always great chatting with you. You do a great job, and you're one of the giants in your field. There's no question about that. If you want a great speaker, I know I can always count on Catherine to give a new and really energetic talk and wake up the audience. And that's an art. And every person that we have at the meeting, we'd love to have them be as good at connecting with the audience as Catherine Maley. But most important, I think you've been in the industry for so long, and you've studied practices. You've made it an art form of studying practices and learning from different practices that. You're one of the great advisors out there, and not only that, you have such a pleasant countenance about you, and you've even visited Lexington before and seen our.
I'm going to be back as soon as the leaves change.
Yeah, you keep wanting to come back. Well, maybe this is the fall that you'll be able to do it.
Right.
Hopefully, I would invite everybody to come to our great state. I think Kentucky is one of the most beautiful states out there, and we have fast horses and. We have great bourbon, so.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being a guest on my podcast. I appreciate it, and I'm going to have you back. And everybody, thank you. I hope you enjoyed this.
But everybody that's out there listening, Global Aesthetics, November 5th through 8th. Pray that this horrible plague goes away and that we can all get together and kind of enjoy each other's company and in a great environment and have some fun and learn some stuff. So anyway, Catherine, great talking with you.
Yeah, and I'll be at that meeting as well, so I'll hope to see you there. I'll put all those links in the show notes. I'd like you to also join that Facebook club, Aesthetic Authority. I think you get a lot out of that as well.
I'll send you an invitation.
Okay, great.
Right.
Thank you so much. All right, everybody, please subscribe to Beauty and the Biz. And if you wouldn't mind, give me a review because it helps me spread the word about this podcast. And then please, if you have any comments or feedback, please go ahead and email me at my website at catherinemaley.com. Or you can certainly DM me on Instagram at Catherine Maley MBA. And with that, I bid you good night and we'll talk again. Thank you so much.
We hope you found valuable insight on this episode of Beauty and the Biz. For more episodes, tools, and Catherine's free book, visit www.catherinemaley.com. That's www.catherinemaley.com. And be sure to subscribe to get the latest practice building strategies delivered to you. And don't forget to share this Beauty and the Biz podcast with your staff and colleagues.